This is the last word. I'm Avni Raja, and today we are going to pick up the issue of this Kota hospital where more than 100 babies have now died in December alone. And in the year 2019, 962 babies have died. And this is all in one single hospital in Rajasthan's Kota, that's the J.K. Lawn Hospital. Now, pigs roam outside this hospital. There is filth outside the hospital. The facilities are so bad that half the equipment doesn't work, and the equipment that actually works can't be maintained. There's a lack of nursing staff. The list goes on and on. In fact, this number, viewers, is going to shock you because in 6 years, more than 6,000 children have died in this particular hospital. A Rajasthan government panel report has said that the hospital needs improvement, that oxygen pipelines need to be laid. So where is all of this promised upgrade? Why are babies continuing to die? Meanwhile, our netas are too busy blaming one another. The complete lackadaisical attitude, the brazen responses we are seeing is appalling. Take a look.
शुरू से जब वहाँ से 9 बजे निकाल दिए बच्ची को।
ये डिलीवरी कब हुई थी, कब लाए थे, रेफर हुआ क्या आया था, क्या था मामला?
हम रविवार को 12 बजे वो हुई।
ये तो जिंदगी छोड़ के आए थे बच्चे।
आपको क्या पता है?
उसके बाद में हम अभी सुबह 9 बजे वहाँ से निकाल दिए। निकलने के बाद में हमने जाने की कोशिश को अंदर जाने नहीं दिया। 11 बजे हम वहाँ पहुँचे तो बच्ची मरी हुई मिली।
ये अंदर मरी थी बारी
अंदर।
मैं किसी को इस मौके पर दोष नहीं देना चाहता। ये मैं कहना चाहूँगा कि हमने शुरुआत से ही इसमें कोई राजनीति नहीं करी है, क्योंकि जो स्थिति बनी है देश के अंदर, नागरिक सिटीजन अमेंडमेंट एक्ट के बाद में जो माहौल पूरे प्रदेश में देश में बना हुआ है, ध्यान डाइवर्ट करने के लिए इस प्रकार से जानबूझ करके कुछ लोग शरारत कर रहे हैं।
बहुत दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है, बहुत दुखद है, और बच्चों की लापरवाही की वजह से मौत हो और सरकार जो है वो गैर संवेदनशील तरीके से उसको डील करे, ये इससे भी ज़्यादा दुखद बात हो नहीं सकती। इसलिए राजस्थान की सरकार को जो भी रिस्पॉन्सिबल है उसके खिलाफ कार्रवाई भी करनी चाहिए और साथ ही साथ ऐसी व्यवस्था भी सुनिश्चित करनी चाहिए कि इस तरह की फिर से कोई दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण घटना न हो।
Whether it is Kota, Gorakhpur or encephalitis deaths in Bihar, Muzaffarpur, that tells us that our priorities as a government, as a nation, is misplaced. If we cannot give a secure future to our kids, and I'm urging the Rajasthan government, please set everything aside, put all your resources. No more deaths should be reported.
So let me introduce my panel who's going to be joining us tonight. Bhaskar, Ghosh, spokesperson of the BJP, will join us. DK Giri, political analyst, will be with us. Dr. Nimali Singh, associate professor of nutrition at the University of Rajasthan. Dr. Dilip Mavalankar, director, Indian Institute of Public Health. Dr. Anupam Sachdeva, senior consultant, pediatrics at Sir Gangaram Hospital, and Rajan Mahan, senior journalist. All of you, thank you so much for joining us on The Last Word today. Dr. Nimali Singh, let me start with you, because you've worked in Rajasthan, you've worked in the areas around Kota. You know what the situation is like on ground. When you see this, you've obviously seen all of this firsthand, but what is your reaction, the number of deaths that we are seeing, the situation of the state of this hospital?
Actually, it is very, very sad that so many deaths are happening in Kota. And because, you see, we have to understand the ground reality of what is happening in Kota is, like Kota is surrounded by Bara, Jhalawad and other border states of MP, border cities of MP. So the load on the hospital, J.K. Lawn Hospital of Kota, is very much, you know, and a lot of children. So these deaths are happening in the NICU, that is the intensive care units of the babies, newborn babies. If the hospital has, say, 100 beds, and if 400 children are coming there every day, you cannot really blame the hospital administration, because they cannot say no also. So there are a lot of, the hospital needs to be expanded. There has to be more staff, there has to be more equipment if you want to deal with these kind of deaths, because the load is too much that the hospital can handle. I think that is one of the major reasons for these deaths. Apart from this, the temperature in Rajasthan, so the newborn who is admitted in the hospital is basically either with some complication or the other. So baby is low birth weight. Low birth weight babies are more likely to die of hypothermia. That is low temperature. The body gets, the temperature cannot be maintained because they have no fat deposition. So these babies are likely to die more. And since December, we are seeing December deaths highest. We have this unpredictable low temperatures in Rajasthan, which has not happened in the last 100 years or so. So all these things have combined together, and that has led to so many deaths. My view on this is, although I have not gone on the spot and not seen what is happening there, but I think one can understand what would be happening. So I think that is my take on what is happening there right now.
Right. Dr. Dilip, if I can come to you here, you know, if you just seeing the visuals that are on our screens of the kind of filth that is outside the hospital, the fact that pigs are roaming about, the fact that, you know, the reports that have come out which talk about how the equipment is not even sufficient, half of it, more than half of it, in fact, doesn't work. There is issue with maintenance, lack of staff. Now, one can argue that the entire system needs to be overhauled, and yes, you know, that is something that needs to be done. But at the basic level, all of this can be fixed.
Yes, I think our public hospitals need a lot more investment, not only money, but also management, because some of these things are issues of management. Third thing is, as we are seeing, and the previous speaker said, our hospitals are overloaded because the hospital planning or health planning is missing. Why should everybody land up in Kota hospital? Why can't there be other hospitals made more functional in the surrounding districts and surrounding taluks so that people go there? So not to say that hospital management and the improvement in public systems need to be done, but our hospital planning, how many beds do we need, how many staff do we need? The other side is, as a nation, we don't believe in maintenance. We always create new things, but we don't maintain. We don't spend enough money on maintenance. Nobody's priority is that. It is always new things, new inaugurations, new hospitals, new medical colleges, but not enough money is spent in maintenance and cleanliness. The other is, of course, our cities are in mess. It is not the pigs and what you are seeing in the hospital is part of the city, and cities are in mess. So we have to also look at from that angle.
Okay. Dr. Anupam Sachdeva, coming to you, because this is a hospital that claims to specialize in treating children. That is what's, you know, what stands out here. The hospital claims that it specializes in treating children, and yet if you look at the kind of facilities that the neonatal ICU has, that the hospital has in order to actually treat children, that's just not there.
Well, you know, I agree with my previous speakers that the whole system is rotten. It is rotten because we have not been able to keep pace with the population for the demands of the population and, you know, other things. Now, I'm not offering any excuses. There is no excuse for equipment not working. There is no excuse for pigs and dogs, etc., roaming around in the campus of the hospital. Leave aside, they can roam around in the city. But what is the business of pigs and dogs being in the hospital premises? There is no excuse for dirty water falling from the rooftop, and there is no excuse for 4455 babies being on each bed of the hospital. This is not today's occurrence. The 100 deaths which have occurred in December are a signal of the malady of the health system in our country. The number of deaths is not just 100 in, in a month, but it is 1,000 in a year. to say that it is the bitter cold which has led to 100 deaths is also wrong. It is going on round the clock, 24 hours a day, and almost 365 days of a year. So we cannot offer any excuses for that. I think what we have to do is we have to declare that our health system is in a state of intensive care unit on the ventilator. And we have to take measures to take care of the health system. If we constantly bicker on this, that this is a state subject and this is a Congress Sarkar or it's a BJP Sarkar, nothing is going to get done. We need to put it as, so if the center wants, it should declare it as a central subject, and so be it. We should have money being infused in. There is no excuse for 1% GDP as being the total allocate of the health in our country. There is no excuse for that. There is no excuse that millions of families across the country are pushed below the poverty line because of the expenditure which they do out of the pocket for their health. Every year, millions are pushed below the poverty line. So I think we have to look at it as a systemic failure and a failure of the whole system. We cannot offer any excuses. There may be some local factors which would alter the morbidity and mortality in a particular hospital, but this is a malady which is across the country.
Yes.
Be it Gorakhpur, be it Muzaffarnagar, it may be Bengal, it may be Delhi, it may be tomorrow any other state, but the situation is pretty bad. We have examples across our country where we have achieved excellent, IMR and neonatal mortality rates have come down drastically. See the state of Kerala, see the state of Tamil Nadu. Where have they reached? We have to look acutely at the situation, why the northern states are not reaching where the southern states are. A total rethink, a rejig of the health system is required.
Yes.
And nothing short of that is going to be acceptable.
Yes, absolutely. There are examples across the entire country that we continue to bring forth, and stories of how the healthcare system is completely appalling. But yes, that is something that does need to be discussed. But I want to get into another point right now. Rajan Mahan, the fact here that we're seeing is the way our politicians love to politicize everything. So whether you're talking about air pollution, whether you talk about water pollution, whether it's statues, whether it's protests, whether it's new bills that are passed, everything is politicized today. But somewhere has to draw the line. You can't start politicizing and putting blame games when it comes to deaths of little children, of babies, of infants who have just come into this world and are completely innocent.
Exactly, Avni. In many senses, I would say you've given the wish list of every sensible citizen of this country. We don't want this Congress, BJP, or the BJP versus the opposition on almost every issue. And least of all, on a critical issue, a life and death issue, as we are seeing playing itself out in Kota. Unfortunately, however, one finds that, there is a sense of deja vu. If it's a BJP-ruled state, then one finds that the Congress and its leaders go across and slam the local administration, the state government, etc. And as in this case, we are finding that there's a Congress government in power in Rajasthan, and what we are finding is a rather vulgar and very almost transparent sort of display of politics being played over this issue. I mean, 100 children have died, for heaven's sake. But instead of our netas taking all of this seriously, what they're doing is they're just trying to pin the blame on the Gehlot government and make it seem as if it's in the last 1 year that things have gone dreadfully wrong. In reality, in this Kota hospital, if you look at the specifics, I do know that there were proposals made during the previous tenure of the Gehlot government in its final year in 2012-13. Those proposals for upgrading this hospital were actually thrown into the dustbin by the BJP government that came into power in 2013 December. Subsequently, even some BJP MLAs of Kota, which included the gentleman who's currently the Lok Sabha Speaker, Om Birla, who was then one of the leading MLAs out of Kota, they had requested the state government, then led by Vasundhara Raje, to allocate X amount of money for upgrading this hospital, this children's hospital, into a 300-bed hospital. And what was done? Nothing. Precisely nothing. None of those demands. You know, if action had actually been taken at that time, we may well have seen, this kind of crisis perhaps being averted. What we find instead is that both parties are busy blaming each other. The Congress is very keen to pinpoint that over the past 5 years of BJP rule, the number of deaths at this hospital was much higher than what has happened in 2019. But that still doesn't solve the problem. The problem is, and at some level, I think the media also needs to take some of the blame. In our country, unfortunately, I mean, as my previous speakers have pointed out, the public health system is virtually in a crisis, is in itself on a ventilator, as one of the speakers said. But instead of looking at these as processes, even the media looks at such things only in terms of events. So when a starvation death happens in some state, we go there and then we look at it as a kind of event that has played itself out, rather than looking at very closely and following carefully on a day in and day out basis on how the public distribution system is playing itself out, how whether or not people are getting the food grains, the poor especially, are getting the food grains or not. No, we don't look at that. We only look at it when a starvation death happens. Similarly, we're looking at the public health system, for instance, specifically in Kota today, because a large number of children have died over the past 1 month. What we do need to do as a nation, as a society, as a media, is to tackle all of this on a day in and day out basis, pinpoint the accountability, the responsibility from public officials, from netas who are responsible for ensuring that none of these children meet the kind of horrific death that they're meeting in this very
absolutely, Rajan Mahan. In fact, unfortunately, the problem is that, things aren't taken seriously until and unless the media steps in, and perhaps we don't have the luxury of going into the details with the intricacy that you're talking about, because nobody takes it seriously when you get into so many details until and unless you go on harping on the same topic, 100 deaths in 1 month. And that is when things are taken seriously, whether it's Gorakhpur or now it's this particular Kota hospital. And until and unless the media actually steps in and keeps going on, we actually don't see any change on ground. And that is what here we're hoping to achieve by constantly questioning and constantly asking these questions. But let me go across to DK Giri here. What is your assessment of this entire situation and of the state of this hospital?
Right. I'm a political analyst. I'm a student of politics as well. So I would start by joining issue with the politicization of the issue. I mean, I find it strange when people talk in a democracy that we should not politicize it. I mean, what do you mean by politicization? Talking about political parties which constitute the government either in the state or the center. You cannot avoid it. The gentleman who spoke very well started by saying that we should not politicize it, but he gave a political explanation in terms of who was running and who could be responsible and all that. You cannot escape that, the reference to politics. I am reminded of a famous saying by Bernard Crick, who wrote that book in defense of politics. And this is really very telling comment. He said, you may not think of politics, but politics always thinks of you from womb to the tomb. So particularly in a democracy, we cannot avoid talking about politics. So I am not scared of that. But what you said about health, the conditions of the health situation in our country, it is appalling, as everybody agrees here, and this is a tragedy that was waiting to happen. The hospitals were in bad shape, there were no doors, there were no windows, and somebody said several children were put in one bed. So there are many tragedies like this are waiting to happen unless we take preventive measure and the course correction in due time. So the Rajasthan government is saying that the health was neglected for a long period of time when BJP was in power, and we could not fix it outright, and we are trying to do it. The deaths have reduced, but that by comparing the statistics is not important. If you allow me, there is another, I will quote another Irish poet. He said, "Every death diminishes me." You know, whether it is not how many people died or how many children died. Every death is important. And you ask those parents who lost their children, they are not worried about how many children died in the last 5 years, but they are worried about losing their own children. So quoting statistics and comparative statistics is pathetic, really. That is unwise, and you know, it is escapism. So
why,
to answer your question,
DK Giri, just before I go to Bhaskar Ghosh for his opening comment, DK Giri, the fact is, I'll answer your question. What is politicization? Politicization is when BJP keeps accusing Congress, when Congress keeps accusing BJP, and each party keeps putting the blame on the other person. Nobody is willing to take responsibility of what is happening right now. And the fact that for the last 6 years, 1,000 babies, more than 1,000 babies have been dying every single year. Why is nobody willing to take the responsibility for that, and why is nothing changing on ground? That is the question.
I was coming to that.
Yes, please go ahead.
I was coming to that. If you give me a few seconds. Yes, political parties will accuse each other. That is also normal in democracy. But what I'm saying is, yes, responsibility has to be fixed. Whether it is state government or central government, it is a state subject or a central subject concurrently, that is immaterial. Who is responsible for these deaths today? That unless that is fixed, these things will keep recurring. So the accountability, responsibility, legal responsibility, it's a culpable homicide. You know, it has to be fixed. So that is what I'm saying. So irrespective of the party, it has to be fixed, and then let people watch the debate. Your channel is bringing it up, and let people accuse each other.
So the current ruling government in Rajasthan needs to take ownership of what is happening.
Yes,
I think what we have to do is modify the word politics by dirty politics.
The corruption and the misappropriation in the...
Please, can I...
Yes, Dr. Anupam,
quickly to
you, then I'll go ahead to Bhaskar.
We have to substitute the word.
Avni, I have a lot of things to say.
We have to
if I do not have time, I should not come over here as a representative for the BJP.
Yes, Dr. Anupam, quickly, please. I will go to Bhaskar Ghosh. Yes, Bhaskar Ghosh, I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. Just give me a minute. I'm going to get everybody in. Just give me a minute. Yes, Dr. Anupam, please go ahead very quickly.
I'm not
Politics is the art.
Acquisition
is the art. Politics is the... Sir, nobody is accusing you. Please let me speak. Politics is the art of taking care of things for the benefit of the society.
I am hearing it
not
for last
just
20
pointing
minutes.
fingers
I have not
right,
been given
left,
a chance
and
to
center.
represent my...
We have to join hands. We have to join hands so that these things do not get repeated. I'm not interested in blame finding.
Yes.
I'm not interested in finger finding. What is going to happen to the future? These kids do not have a voice of their own.
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Anupam. That is exactly the point that even I am trying to bring up here. But let's listen into Bhaskar Ghosh as well. He hasn't spoken, has been waiting patiently. Yes, go ahead, Bhaskar Ghosh.
Yeah. Avni, this is the first time I'm just on the screen with you. Let me tell you, apart from a representative or apart from a person from the BJP, I was eventually for more than 6 to 7 years, I was CEO of a first private medical college in Bengal, which has got 700-bedded hospital and a medical college, which is the biggest medical college now. I have literally I was seeing the entire growth of this college along with the hospital I made myself. From that particular experience, let me tell you a couple of things. All my panelists was talking about blame games and who is responsible. I'm giving couple of reports which has been published. First is the National Commission of the Child Rights, NCPCR. They have made a visit to that particular hospital and they have found, hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
And they have submitted a report. They have submitted a report and the show cause notice was issued to the Secretary Medical Education regarding, number one, the infrastructure of this hospital, regarding the shortage of manpower to the hospital, and regarding the overall hospital management, which is also I was an essential part of the hospital management for more than 7 years, and that to a medical college based hospital. So I know what are the infrastructure needed for ICU and ICU, SICU, PICU, and all this, for pediatric ward and all. From that angle, let me tell you that this hospital was running heavily shortage of all the infrastructure, including the staffs, including the clinical and non-clinical staff. Now the question is that this is the country where 69%, according to the report of UNICEF, 69% of child below 5 years, they have been suffering under malnutrition, and they are also facing a lot of deaths. Here, after even filing an show-cause notice to Secretary Medical Education of the present government, I want to know from this forum that what government has taken to have a protective and preventive measures from then to today. Today what we see is a broken window and broken doors, and the report which has been submitted after the death of the 102 patients in December, the cause of lack of oxygen pipeline as well as the severe cold condition because of the broken windows. So see the kind of pathetic situations those hospitals being run, which is essentially a so-called super speciality hospital for the pediatric purpose. Now the question is that if somebody was talking about Gorakhpur incidents, let me tell you, Gorakhpur incident was not a lack of oxygen supply, it is because of encephalitis, and there is an also report from the committee.
Bhaskar Ghosh, don't bring up Gorakhpur because and don't say that this is not comparable to Gorakhpur, because we know the state of the Gorakhpur hospital as well. We know what it was when that incident happened, the kind of appalling conditions in Gorakhpur as well at that point in time.
Compare the same.
And if I can just interrupt you for one more second, what has happened in this Kota hospital also is not new. It has been happening for 6 years, even when you were in power there.
Avni, can I intervene?
No, see, after submitting the show-cause notice,
my point is
what steps have been taken in order to control, in order to improve those infrastructures?
Yes, and I will ask those questions. I will ask those questions. But what did the BJP government do when it was in power? It didn't do anything either. But this is exactly what I mean. All you're doing right now is asking questions and putting the blame on another party. That is not the point. Dr. Nimali Singh, you wanted to come in. Please go ahead.
Yeah, because now see what has happened.
No, what Dr. Giri was telling as an analyst, that it is a political issue because basically it is a political management. And the so-cause was issued to the Secretary Medical Education, who is a part of the government.
So maybe I think we should now look for solutions rather than this blame game, who is wrong and who is right. I think we should think. Yeah.
Yes,
so what is happening? So what is happening is that we have low birth weight babies. India is number 102 on the World Hunger Index. We have the maximum number of children dying. Under 5 mortality rate is highest in India, and that is why we are still the developing countries, the IMR and the MMR. We are still struggling, whereas all the surrounding countries are having better health index. Right. So that makes India and depression also. India, I always talk about how sick India is because we are the diabetes capital, and we have in the health sector, like we have been talking about, we are actually very, very low. And this ownership not only lies with the state government, it lies with the central government also, because we have to now work on preventive strategies. So how can we prevent such deaths is because why are the children coming to NICU? Why we are having such high rates of low birth weight babies in the hospitals is because we are not taking care of the mothers. We are not taking care of their nutrition, and we are not able to bring about healthy children in this world, in India. So that is why we need to we need to work on preventive strategies, as one of the other speakers talked about.
Yes.
And if we are not talking on prevention, then we are spending so much of our time, energy, and money on managing these fractures, right? So we are having more children which are malnourished because they're born low birth weight babies. And that is why the death rates are so high. So we have to look at the root cause. We have to address the adolescent girl. We have rampant anemia in them. They are becoming mothers before the age of 18 years in Rajasthan.
Yes, point taken, Dr. Nimali Singh. I completely agree with you. There is a much deeper issue here. The root of the problem needs to be addressed, and the entire system needs to be overhauled from beginning to end. That is something that needs to be done on an urgent basis. But here, what I'm bringing up today is not about overhauling the system, because that is not something that anyone expects to happen over time. It takes time, and it will probably take its own time for it to happen. But the question here is, and let me read out some of these points here. 13 out of the 19 ventilators are defunct. 111 infusion pumps, 81 are useless, 71 warmers, 44 don't work, 28 nebulizers, 22 are defunct. The hospital has only 6 working oximeters out of 38. 22 blood pressure instruments, only 8 function, 42 beds in the neonatal intensive care unit, for which there are only 20 employees, and the ratio is supposed to be much higher. This is what I'm talking about. The visuals that we just saw on air, which is of pigs roaming around, the kind of, the fact that beds are being shared by so many babies. All of these things is not about the system and overhauling the system. All of this is something that at least that can be fixed to start with, and that is my point today. The fact that the entire system needs to be overhauled is a completely separate issue, and that needs to be taken up on an urgent basis, and we do that. But today, the problem is this. The problem is why for 6 years, these issues haven't been fixed, and why 1,000 babies are dying every single year, and why is nobody taking responsibility? And that is the question. Rajan Mahan, if I can come to you.
Exactly, and I think it's here that we need to look at the specifics, which is that those in the hospital administration very clearly have a direct responsibility and accountability for what's gone wrong. Because if pigs are roaming around, if so many of their equipments are simply not functional, then we realize that those who are responsible for ensuring that the system functions, whatever little system that they do have in place, that system also being so thoroughly dysfunctional tells us a lot about how the local administration, the hospital superintendent, the hospital principal, etc., those people, the heads need to roll for sure. But more than them, also the supervisory people in the district administration. For instance, what has the Kota collector been doing when this hospital has been collapsing in this way? Not just over the past 6 years, but also over the past 1 year when the Congress has been ruling. So those people who were brought in as the district collector in Kota, how much of supervision has that district collector done? And I must tell you, Avni, that Kota happens to be not just a district, but also a division. I mean, it's a division headquarters. Kota Divisional Commissioner, what has his role been? So I think unless, instead of fixing responsibility only at some lowly doctors who may not really have had the administrative capacity or the power or the authority to rectify things, but also to look at those who were responsible for supervising over this entire hospital, how have they goofed up? How have they not lived up to their responsibility? I think all of that needs to be looked at and looked at urgently. I know that already the government is putting in place some corrective measures. They're already talking about giving an order and ensuring that piped oxygen can be ensured for the ICU in this hospital. But the point is that why has that also not been thought of? If now they can put it in place within the next fortnight, as the government is saying, why was it not done over the past 1 year? Forget the last 5 years. Of course, the BJP, not having done that during its previous tenure, has really no moral right to now start making all these noises about how things have not happened very well this year. But the fact is that even the Congress needs to own up to this responsibility that over the past 1 year, they could have rectified, and where have they gone wrong? They need to look at that and look at it very closely, and then heads must roll. And one final thing, we look at the public health system and the entire Sarkari system, this lackadaisical, this chalta hai kind of attitude, which is all pervasive in the Sarkari system. I think we need to have a relook as a nation and as a society on these fixed jobs that people get. So a person becomes a government doctor, or a person becomes an administrative official, passes one exam, and then for the whole of his lifetime or her lifetime, he or she is fixed up, their jobs are entirely secure. I think we need to come to that situation in our country where we start looking at either you perform or you perish. Get out if you can't perform.
Right. Bhaskar Ghosh, yes, you wanted to come in. Please go ahead.
Can I also?
My last note is that now I was just hearing to all my panelists. Now I just want to mention 2 points here. After we came into the government 2014, how many number of aims what we have established in last 70 years with respect to last 70 years, what is the comparison? I mean, our number of aims is much more than whatever aims have been built up in last 70 years. That itself shows the intention of the government to go for high-end hospitals and medical colleges. Recently in Safdarjung, Mr. Modi has inaugurated 555-bed super specialty block with 500 emergency block. I ask all my panelist doctors, because I was a CEO of a medical college and hospital for 7 years. I am asking that last 70 years, how many hospitals has got 500-bedded emergency block and 555-bedded super specialty? I am asking. I think that shows the intention of this government is always to provide the best
we'll
possible
answer it. What is the point?
clinical
Let
treatment
me
and
answer
medical
that.
facilities to each and every members. And even the Ayush Yojana, let me finish. The Ayush Yojana to give a 5 lakh coverage to more than 50 crore people, for the 10 crore people, which government has envisaged till date. So now the question is that if we have to, on one hand, if it is central responsibilities and central policy is concerned, then we have done much better than whatever been thought of even till 2014. A lot of government has functioned in this country, but we have thought and we have made it happen. 26th AIMS has been now constructing in Haryana.
But
so
Bhaskar Ghosh, if I can just say, what is the point of talking about all of this right now when we have this hospital here where there are 1,000 babies who have been dying every year for the last 6 years? Why does it have to take 1,000? It doesn't take 1,000 deaths, 1,000 babies dying to realize that you can't have pigs roaming around outside the hospital, that you can't have such dirty, filthy conditions outside the hospital, that you have to have functioning equipment in the hospital, which claims to be a specialized hospital for babies. Why does it take so many deaths to realize that that's what needs to be done? That is the question. I'm sorry, I've got a lot of people who want to respond here. Let me first go across to Dr. Dilip right now, and I'll go to the others after that. Yes, Dr. Dilip.
Yeah, I want to make 2 points. One is we don't have a hospital inspection systems. Many developed countries have independent hospital inspectors. They go around and they can close down even a public hospital if it is not meeting the standards. MCI does that for medical colleges, not for the hospitals. So I think we have to really seriously set up an independent hospital inspection committees and system which will not allow this to happen. That was the first point, madam. Second point, when we say 100 deaths, 1,000 deaths, I haven't heard anybody talk about rate of deaths. See, it is not 100 deaths or 1,000 deaths is important. How many people came to the hospital and out of which how many survived and how many died is important. So I think we have to have hospital statisticians or medical records and statistics departments, which are abysmally missing. Even in AIMS, the hospital statistics is not really good. So my sense is, my plea as a public health person is look at the rates. The rate of infant mortality in Rajasthan is 4 times that of Kerala, Nagaland, Mizoram, many other states. So I think we have to also look at, we are talking about this, but what about hundreds of thousands of infants dying in rural areas, not even reaching the hospital? So I think we are talking about this
Dr. Dilip,
hospital.
while I agree with you that even if what you're saying is true and if the mortality rate is not, as high and it's just the absolute number that seems high, that still doesn't make it right that this is the state of the hospital. It still doesn't make it right. So while, yes, that needs to be looked at, it still is an issue at the way the hospital is being run. Yes, Dr. Anupam, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think we have to look at it as a two-pronged strategy. A is improvement of the hospitals and fixing the responsibility and trying to improve them and improve the human resource and the equipment, etc. in the hospitals. But for me, most important is improvement in primary health care at level 1 and level 2. Because if you improve the primary health care at level 1, level 2, you won't need that many level 3 hospitals. Your expenditure comes down. Look at countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Their health indices are far better than that of India. Unfortunately, our country is, has islands of excellence in a morass of misery. That's what I call the health system of our country. These are islands of excellence like AIIMS and other institutions, but overall it's a morass of misery. We have to reduce the morass of misery, increase the islands of excellence, and then only. I mean, I know that Sri Lanka, which has a very low mortality, health indices are much better than in India. They come to India for their cardiac surgeries, for the liver transplants, for the bone marrow transplants, but they don't need us for primary health care. And we are looking at still struggling with our primary health care. Building of AIIMS is not the answer. We have to have not to have an inverted pyramid. Inverted pyramid is that we have a very top-heavy kind of a thing with a level 3 care, and the bottom is very narrow, which is our primary health care. It has to be a proper pyramid with a huge primary health care base and a top leading up to the pinnacle of a level 3 care hospital. We have no system of proper referral. Everybody can walk into AIIMS and get their treatment, even if they may be suffering from acute respiratory infection. ARI, they walk into AIIMS and they clutter up the OPDs of AIIMS, where the AIIMS has to handle level 3 care. So unfortunately, the whole system is lopsided, and we have to improve that system. Unless and until we improve that system, we will not be able to deliver, not in the next decade, in the next few decades also, what we want to deliver to our countrymen.
Yes, absolutely. And this is exactly...
We have to understand that these kids do not have a voice.
Yes, absolutely. And this is the exact outcome of what you were saying.
A think tank has to be made.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. DK Giri, please go ahead.
We have to have it.
Yeah. I wish to make three brief points. One is that, you see, the larger health, macro health problems are policy issues, and with appropriate policies one can tackle that. My fellow panelists have hinted at that. The other is micromanagement issues which you listed, which were not there in the hospital. For that, immediate responsibility has to be fixed up. You cannot blame that on politicians. It has to be administrators, and the responsibility is to fix on them.
What do you mean you cannot blame politicians? It's a state-run hospital. If you don't blame the state government, who are you supposed to blame? It is the state's job to ensure the hospital is run properly.
I'm saying.
The state appoints people to run the hospital.
Avni, these are micro administration. Sure. Or you can by implication politicians also come in. But I was talking of micromanagement. If some machine instrument is not working, blood pressure machine is not working, you don't call a member of parliament. You call a technician to fix it. That's what I meant. Yes. Micro administrative issues. The second thing is demand and supply of the healthcare also. You see, I worked in the development sector. Health is not a priority for the people. We have to demand healthcare from our authorities, from our system. Unless the demand is generated, the supply side also will be weak. The third point I wanted to make is to respond to the provocative statement made by Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh comparing BJP and others. I just want to tell him with one metaphor. You know, BJP makes big announcement, makes toll promises,
Mr. Giri, I am
but
not a
does not
provocative
deliver.
statement.
What is the
What I
point
want to
in
say you
making
the state of the facts.
super specialty hospital? Wait a minute. We have heard you, Mr. Ghosh. Please, we have heard you, then you can rebut me. You see, you can build several aims, but what Avni was listing is missing in a district hospital. So see the gap. What is the point in making aims hospital? Please don't interrupt. Please don't interrupt. Let me finish. Let me finish. The second thing, just one answer, one metaphor, Mr. Ghosh. The cow on the picture does not give milk. Okay, there is a saying in Kerala, the cow in the picture does not give milk. And that's what BJP does. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Ghosh, I'm sure you want to respond to that. Please go ahead.
Yeah. In fact, what Mr. Giri is telling time and again, that it is not very important that how many aims we have we are established, but if it is a central responsibility and there is in a federal structure, there is central and state responsibilities. If the central responsibility, we have shown our responsibility and our motto for a Bikash, that aims at our level we could establish, and we are doing it randomly. We are doing it state after state. Now, what has today happened is a state matter. This state we are also ruling for last 5 years, but now that is why we have been, we have been thrown out of the power, and the new government has come. And naturally, being an opposition, we'll expect whatever fault we have made, if at all we have made, that should be rectified by the present government. And the charge sheet which has been, show cause notice which has been issued, I just want to know what present government has done on that basis. Any death is important. I'm not trying to have a politicizing on the death issue, but I'm talking about the infrastructure, the lack of, Dr. Giri, Mr. Giri has told one thing right. There's micromanagement, that is your lack of staff, both clinical staff and non-clinical staff. That is also one of the reasons of those deaths which has we are mentioning today. That is my point of view, that whatever is a central responsibility, we are doing it at our cost and at our supervision, and we are making excellent standards of the health facilities, medical facilities, and also the medical learning facilities. But we expect the state will also follow that, so that it should be a cohesive environment through which both the state and center will work together in the coming days.
Bhaskar Ghosh, I appreciate the fact that you're talking about cohesiveness and talking about the state and center working together and all of these kind of, rhetorics that you're giving. But the truth is, none of that happens on ground. What is the point if your primary healthcare system is in such shambles? And there's only, every politician keeps saying, I don't want to politicize the issue. And that, I think, is the worst statement, because that means that the issue is already been politicized. But I want to get in the view of one of our callers who's on the phone line right now. Srinivasan from Belgavi in Karnataka is on the phone line. Yes, Mr. Srinivasan, please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. See, this whole thing, it looks like straight out of some Dracula movie. First, in Gorakhpur, one doctor was sacked and he is reinstated. Nobody till today is held responsible and given adequate punishment, number one. Number two, and it was in UP and Congress and others were howling. And now it is in Rajasthan, now BJP is howling. Then now who is actually responsible for this? And regarding this, again, what you are showing, this filth of pigs and all this. Now, if we ask the hospital management, they will say corporation is responsible for this. If you say the corporation, they will say the medical superintendent didn't tell us. That whoever is the superintendent, he should be sacked. Because as one of your senior journalists just pointed out, the policy of the government should be hire and fire. If this, like foreign countries, if they have a permanent job, they will just have their own flourishing private practice, and to hell with the poor who actually need medical assistance.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. All right, Mr. Srinivas, thank you for joining us with your view. Well, that's, I think, a good reflection of what people think today and what's the kind of opinion that people have and the kind of faith that people have in the public healthcare system. And that is something that every single politician, every single leader, irrespective of party, needs to really think about. Rajan Mahan, you wanted to come in and just a point to take forward what Mr. Srinivasan on the phone line just said. This holding people accountable, we had both DK Giri and Bhaskar Ghosh talking about the micromanagement and how that needs to be pinpointed and made accountable. But I want to know what kind of action has been taken on the people who haven't delivered on their jobs. Have they been fired? Has any action been taken on people who didn't ensure that the equipment is working or who didn't ensure that the hospital was fully staffed? What is the point of saying you should hold people accountable at the micro level when you don't take action when they don't? Rajan Mahan.
Well, exactly. What's missing in this entire discussion around the Kota hospital is exactly action. And what one finds is that so far the Rajasthan government has only taken action against 2 of the junior doctors who've been suspended. But we are all waiting to see who are the seniors who will actually be punished for the kind of laxity that has led to this crisis. But to come to another point that Mr. Ghosh was talking about the number of aims that they're creating and how the central government is trying to help out, etc. It's very ironical that, in our country we have a federal system, but instead of cooperative federalism, what we're seeing is confrontational federalism. For instance, in this particular case of Kota infant deaths, what we found the BJP doing is that leader after leader has gone around politicizing this issue. In fact, the BJP's top brass sent in a delegation of 4 senior MPs from Rajasthan to try and take a look at it and then try and point out more of the loopholes, etc. Far from anybody from the Union Health Ministry actually sending in some medical experts, for instance, to try and mitigate the crisis that's developed in Kota, to try and ensure that the number of deaths that continue to go on can be quickly brought under some kind of control, at least in a temporary sense. So if that had happened, we would have actually seen that yes, there was some synergy between the central government and the state government, that the center itself was also realizing the gravity of the situation, not merely to score political brownie points, but because they wish to address the human situation. They wish to ensure that not so many children actually in future die in this hospital. But sadly, instead of any signs of cooperative federalism, what we are seeing is just confrontational politics playing itself out, as in many, many other earlier instances. I mean, as the gentleman who called on the phone was mentioning, when the Gorakhpur deaths happened, we had a lot of Congress leaders shouting. Now when this crisis has erupted in Kota, what we're finding is hordes of BJP leaders, including, ironically, even Yogi Adityanath, the Chief Minister of UP, who one would have thought on health issues should possibly keep scrupulous silence. Even he has gone around slamming the Gehlot government, which sounded extremely ironical and hypocritical to a lot of people in Rajasthan. I think what we need to do fundamentally in our society is not to give these, fixed jobs for 30 years and 35 years to people, but these should be turned now into tenurial jobs where people perform for 5 years, they get an extension for another 5 years. Then they perform well, then they get another extension for 5 years. Because I think this whole Sarkari system where people get recruited at 25 or whatever, and then are safely in their positions till the age of 60, 65, whatever. The retirement age for doctors in Rajasthan is, for instance, 65, and across the country. And whether they perform, whether people under their charge are actually getting the kind of medical care and attention that is required is nobody's business. Nobody's really looking at it. I think we need to rectify that on an urgent basis.
Yes, yes, absolutely, Rajan Mahan. I'm afraid we're out of time. And I'd like to thank my panelists for joining us today. But the point is this. It's appalling, the kind of responses that we've been seeing ever since this story came to light. BJP says Congress is responsible. Congress says BJP is responsible. Meanwhile, the hospital committee rules out negligence. Promises of upgrading the hospital are only that, empty promises. How can our netas and politicians sleep at night knowing that they are playing politics with the lives and deaths of innocent babies who have just entered this world? Can't for once politics be put aside? I refuse to believe that 1,000 babies dying year after year isn't something that can't be fixed. It doesn't take 1,000 babies to die every year to realize that this is not the way a hospital needs to be run. Why is it only now that this issue has come up? When will our netas rise above all of these ridiculous politics that are being played? This endless blame game. Yes, like many of our panelists said, the entire system needs to be overhauled. And that cannot happen overnight. But surely that can't possibly be the reason or an excuse for any hospital to be in this kind of a state. I'll leave you with that thought.